Hello, everyone. Do you know what today is? Today is FutureProof Friday. Yes, FutureProof Friday. I made it my own holiday. So today we're going to be talking about something that I get a lot of questions around, something that is very important and really is one of the just probably most important parts of future-proofing your brand. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Courtney McKenzie Newell. I am the CEO of Crown Marketing and Communications, best-selling author of FutureProof, the blueprint for building a brand Gen Z and millennials love, which is also available on Audible right now. I'm so excited about that. And the creator of the FutureProof Academy. So today we're going to talk about personal branding. And when we think about personal branding, a lot of times when people think personal brand, they associate that term with celebrities. They associate that term with influencers. But the reality is the future of marketing, the future of business development is to really make sure that you have a face behind the company, really in front of the company, because that's really going to be a key difference when it comes to standing out in the crowded marketplace. In my book, I talk about one thing that's super important, and that is really tapping into the hearts of your customers. And the way that you do that is by being in front of your customers regularly. That's really going to make all the difference when it comes to future-proofing your brand and being that brand that people remember, that brand that people have that rapport with, and that brand that really triggers an emotion when they're thinking about you versus your competitors. So today I want to give you some tips on how you can dominate in your market and leverage your personal brand and really dominate no matter what stage you're in at the personal brand development phase. So the first thing that I want you to think about, one thing that we always do with our clients is what we have called the authority audit. And the authority audit is broken down into 3 phases. And the reason why an authority audit is so important, and one of the first things that we do, is we really want to see where the market is, who the influencers are in that specific market, where you lie in the market, and how we can really profile you to really make sure that we're getting out that area of expertise that you want to be recognized for, and to make sure that the messaging is in place, the platforms are correct, and that you really have those key offers. So let's actually go through each one of those individually. So the first thing that you want to do when you're thinking about your personal brand and future-proofing your personal brand is to make sure that you're on the right platforms. There are a million platforms and new ones popping up every day. But one thing that you really want to make sure that you're focusing on is the right platforms. It's not a every platform strategy, because the reality of it is even if you have a full team of marketers working on your behalf, it's really difficult to really have that rapport built on every single platform. So I always like to say, pick your top 3 platforms, 2 to 3 platforms that you will dominate on. And I will say typically for professional services, it's very important to make sure that LinkedIn is a part of that strategy. So when we're talking about the right platforms, really do an assessment of not the platforms that you like, because a lot of people say, well, I love Twitter, but their audience may not be on Twitter. Or I love Snapchat, but their audience may not be on Snapchat. And what happens if you do that, you end up wasting a lot of time. And the whole point of having future-proof marketing is to make sure that you're maximizing your time and making sure that you're reaching the right customers with the right messaging. So the first key with that authority audit is to make sure that you're identifying your top 2 to 3 platforms. The next phase of the authority audit is really making sure that you have that key messaging. Messaging is so important, because we all know that one wrong message can be misconstrued, misinterpreted, and it can really end up damaging your brand. So after you've picked those 3 platforms, 2 to 3 platforms that you feel are the best for your brand and where your customers are and where you would like to engage with them, the next thing is thinking about your key messaging. Your key messaging, again, you'll see we have a system with 2 to 3, no more than 2 to 3 key messages. The reason why you want to focus on only 2 to 3 key messages is because you want to make sure there's not information overload and that you're seen as the expert in your specific space. If you're an expert in real estate, an expert in culinary arts, an expert in health and wellness, an expert in engineering, and all these different things, the market will, it's just too it's just too crowded and your messaging just ends up sinking to the bottom of search engines and you confuse your audience. So really nailing down your messaging into 2 to 3 categories is going to be the key. And when I'm talking about those 2 to 3 categories, we always like to break them up. Personal is going to be a part of it. So if you like to highlight certain things about your personal life, then that's going to be one bucket. The second bucket is going to be professional. And then the third bucket tends to be philanthropic. So anything that you do to give back, those are typically the 3 categories that we like to break those 3 key messages down into. The next thing and the last thing when it comes to your authority audit is making sure that you create really solid offers to the market. When it comes to those offerings and when it comes to those platforms and the key messages, you really want to make sure that the offers that you're extending to your audience are exactly what they want. And the best way to do that is not by just creating something. It's always to make sure that you're having that dialogue and that engagement with your audience so that you can really get a feel for what they want and that you can make sure that you deliver exactly what they want so that when you roll it out, it's a hit. One thing that I hate seeing and one thing that breaks my heart is when someone spends all this time and they think they've built something amazing or they're about to launch a new product or a new division of their company only to find out that there wasn't enough market research done to be able to reach the market or reach the numbers that they need in order to have a sustainable new division of their business. So I always like to make sure that this strategy, the platforms, the messages, the offers are always thought out in a very in-depth way, and that there's a strategy around them because you want to make sure that you're not wasting your time, you're not wasting your efforts, energy, and you also want to make sure that you're not conflicting with anything else that you may have said before or anything else that you plan to do in the future. So let's say, for example, if you are rolling out a new product that your audience doesn't necessarily love, and then you can that one, and 2 months later you roll out a new product, it's not gonna land and it's not gonna give you that bang that you were looking for. So it's really important to make sure that when you're thinking about that key messaging, you're thinking about those key products and services that you're going to be rolling out or introducing to your audience, that you have a strategy behind it. A great way to make sure that our foolproof way to make sure that you roll out the right products is to really create what we like to call our customer journey map. And the customer journey map, some people call them customer funnels, and that's fine too, but we like to think about it as a customer journey map. And the customer journey map is all around the first touch point that customers will have with your business. So let's say, for example, you write a LinkedIn article because you're building up your LinkedIn influence. If you're building up your LinkedIn influence and you're becoming a thought leader in this space, one thing that you want to make sure that you do is you think through, okay, if they read this article and they love it, what do I want the next step to be? And for example, one thing that we always like to encourage is to create what we call a lead magnet or a freemium. And the great part about creating a freemium is that you're able to have that connectivity with your audience and you're able to continue the conversation. So typically with a lead magnet, let's say, for example, you have an article in a major publication, or you have where you create a LinkedIn article, you want to make sure that you have that lead magnet and you lead them to whatever that freemium is, so that you're thinking through every single stage. Once they get that lead magnet, they're going to typically enter in their email address, so you've now captured their information. Now you want to keep the conversation going with them. If you've written a book, then you want to make sure that you have a lead magnet or a freemium offered in your book. And this strategy can be used even if you are selling products on Amazon. If you're in the e-commerce space, there's always a way to create that customer journey map, and something that you really want to make sure that you do. And that way you know exactly what your customers are consuming because you're directing them down the path that you want them to go, so that you know that you can build that rapport with them. So let's quickly recap why it's so important to create your personal brand and to really future-proof your personal brand. I know there are a ton of strategies out there, but this one is the one that I found over the past decade to really be the most effective. And the reason why it's so important to make sure that you're creating that future-proof personal brand is because at the end of the day, it's all about connecting with your customers. It's all about building that rapport, building that relationship, having those frequent points of contact with them. And when you do that, that's the way that you build that brand affinity with your customers. And when you have that brand affinity, when they love you, when they can't get enough of you, that's when you have a customer for life. And those are what we call lifers. So that wraps up this specific episode of Future Proof Fridays. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to know more about future proofing your brand, I definitely encourage you to go ahead over to Audible or Amazon and purchase your copy of Future Proof, the best-selling book on marketing and business. So I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.